Content warning. The stories and themes shared throughout this podcast may contain themes that can be distressing for you. If needed, please pause and do what you need to do to take care of yourself. If needed, please reach out to a mental health professional for support.
Welcome back to another episode of Resilient AF with Blair and Alana. Without Alana, just Blair, but not just Blair, with also Amy. So I'm really excited about this chat because I met Amy through actually another Amy. I seem to have a lot of Amy's in my life, but this Amy, there's just something about her. There is just something about her, and I can't wait for you to have a chance to dive into her world. So, Amy Singleton is an entrepreneur based in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Originally a registered nurse, Amy's own health forced her out of a career that she loved. Looking for purpose in all the wrong places, she wound up alone and desperately suicidal. Amy now dedicates her life to helping others. She sees hope and purpose beyond their own failures. Too many people struggle to navigate their careers and families without sacrificing professional and personal achievements. She uses stories, humor, and practical insight to inspire women to carve out their own path for success after failure. Whether we've failed ourselves, been failed by others, or been failed by our own bodies, there is hope ahead when we cut through the BS and dig into living our most authentic lives. And let me tell you, she is here. She tells it how it is. And we're going to dive in today to talk about how she lost everything, including her health, her career, and her marriage. And she's going to walk us through that journey. So, Amy, welcome to the pod.
Thank you for having me, Blair. I didn't even plan this. It's just like one of those humid days, but I wore my sounds like bullshit to me hat, And so that's kind of like what you have to come to is like sounds like bullshit to me and make a different choice. That's what I had to say to me.
Yeah, let's talk
We
about
love to say that to others, but I had to say that to me at some point.
I love it. I love that you're a little like cussy like me because some people are not.
Yeah.
And
I'm a
some
little
people
cussy
are.
cusserton.
I mean, our book, Resilient AF,
Yes.
Stories of Resilience, Volume 2, you're going to be in it.
Yes.
And
Cannot wait.
I can't wait. I can't wait to showcase you there. But we're going to talk here live and in the flesh. Unless you're
Yes.
listening, it's just live and in the voice.
That's right.
Let's talk about your story.
Yeah. So, where should I start? Um, it, it was a long way to resilience. And my story talks about it was 1,000 tiny steps, right? Um, I married my high school sweetheart, lost that marriage after almost 20 years together, two kids, found out he was gay. Then I had a series of severe health problems. I'd had a gastric bypass surgery. Then I broke my back, and then I was diagnosed with cancer, and just like a million things happened that just kind of demolished my life one one notch at a time. And I found myself, like living back at home with my parents in a wheelchair, not able to work. And basically what had happened was that I had built my life on the identities of other people and on what I now understand to be finite projects instead of an infinite purpose that I could serve no matter where I went. And
Wow.
and the loss of everything um, was in direct correlation to not having anything really that was for me, that was true to my purpose.
And that's a lot that you went through. And thank you so much for sharing. Any one of those situations would be very, very hard to navigate. Let's go back to kind of the beginning of what you shared with learning that your husband was gay.
Yeah, that was wild. So
Let's all
um,
take a drink of our water.
let's all take a drink of our water. Sober 6.5 years, thank God, but I'm still on coffee at 4 p.m. somehow. Uh, it's another. We just trade one addiction for another, right?
That's
Um,
late to drink coffee. You must like good for
right.
you.
I don't know. I probably should be off of it by now. But Yeah. So I met him when we were age 12, seventh grade. We were both kind of that awkward, chubby child that didn't quite fit in. And we found a lot of synergy with one another. And we're just like fast friends. And I really pursued him. And kind of, it's funny because looking back, I joke now with my friends, like I have the worst gaydar in history because I was in love with gay men from the start. Like George Michael, I think started it all in the 80s for me. And it was just downhill from there. Like Ricky Martin, I was just let down over and over and over again by all the men I love. But, uh, ironically, like where we live, which is in Oklahoma City, it was the 90s. And we're in like a very we're in the Bible Belt. It was not a time when it was safe for young men to be gay or say they were gay, and we were best friends and we came from a time when our parents really were all doing the best they could, but our parents really just, there was a lot of expectation put on us to kind of commit and finish and follow through with the things that you started, right? I mean, that's just how it was when I was younger. And so we just kept taking the next step and doing the next thing that thought we were supposed to do. He knew full well walking down the aisle that he was gay, but he just didn't know how to manage that as a person. And so there were things over the years that probably should have triggered me to know that. Um, but ultimately I had some intuition that I ignored, which I even still work on to this day. It gets stronger and stronger and louder all the time, and I'm learning to listen to it more. But there were cues and clues, which is really part of the recovery from all of that, right? Like a lot of people, I lived in the victim mentality for so long, Blair. I thought I was the only human being that had ever happened to. Like, and well, little did I know there's an entire like whole subsect of women and men who have been through this exact same thing as me. But I felt really alone because I isolated after it. Um, it wasn't my news to tell. He wasn't ready to tell. And so,
Like, how did you find
even,
out? So I'm interrupting you because, like,
oh no,
maybe
okay.
before like telling people, how did
Yeah,
you find out? Because you're probably one of the more important people to know since you were the
yeah,
other partner.
for
And
sure. Okay.
yeah,
So, how we had been having trouble, right? We had two young kids and we were just having a lot of communication issues. I was very type A, he's very beta guy. And it just like, it was always just a struggle. So we were going to counseling and all, we were doing all these things, trying to make things work. And it was our ninth wedding anniversary. And we had left our kids who were, I think 2 and 6 at the time, with my parents. And we went down to like a bed and breakfast about an hour and a half away from our home. And this was like kind of if you've ever been in a relationship where you're like, we're going to take this last trip, we got to make it work. Like, we're going to romance the hell out of each
yeah.
other and it's all going to be okay by Sunday morning, right? Yeah, no. Like, was no. I mean, there was just nothing left romantically. Like, he was super depressed. I was so done. And so we were on our way home from that trip, and we were like, okay, like we now refer to it as our divorce trip. But we were driving home, and it was just that gut intuition feeling in my belly that was saying, ask him. We had actually sat with a male counselor 18 months, 2 years prior to this moment. And that man looked me dead in the face when my ex was not in the room and he said, he's gay. And I was like, I don't know. And I was so, oh my God, I was running away from every clue, even that man looking me dead in the face and saying it. After we explored some of the problems we were having, he's like, no, he is completely gay. And I was like, I don't know. And we quit seeing the guy. So I just had that feeling in my gut. We're driving on the highway where everybody knows you're sitting side to side. It's easier to have that hard conversation. And so I just mustered up every bit of gumption I could possibly manage. And I said, have you ever thought that you might be attracted to men? And I thought that was a pretty non-confrontational way of asking. I mused and mused on how do you word this? And he didn't say anything. And he just kept driving for like the longest 2 minutes probably of my life.
My gosh.
And then we exited off the highway. I will never forget every time I passed this exit on the Interstate 35 that runs right through Oklahoma. I just, like, not anymore, but like for years and years, when I saw that exit sign, I was just like, there's where it happened. And he pulled over, and this 6'2", 250-pound bear of a man, best friend since age 12, just he just crumbled. And we both started crying. And I like unbuckled and I moved over and I sat on his lap and I just like held his ginormous head as he just sobbed and sobbed. And he said, "Why aren't you walking down the highway? Why are you loving me? Why are you here?" I was like, "You're all I know. I love you. You're my best friend. I don't know what this looks like for us, but I know that this doesn't change the fact that you're important to me and that we've been in this together for a really long time." And so, we drove home, and he went to pick up our kids, and I went over to a friend's house. And she bought the wine. I was like, "Hey, are you home? Because I'm coming to spend the night." And she's like, "What?" And I was like, "I can't talk about it." She's like, "Do I need wine?" And I was like, "Yes." And I just went over there. I was so angry, but at the same time feeling, you know, vulnerable and all these things. And I knew, like, he was like, "Please don't tell anybody. I'm not ready to tell." And so I was like, "Great. Okay." I did tell that friend at work, which ultimately the one person I told, it did get back to everyone at work and all across town in the medical community. It was crazy. But so that's how I found out. And then, like, my ex-husband was kind of the son my parents never had. He actually lived with my family. Right after we graduated high school, he had a bad home situation. He moved into my home and lived in my parents' spare bedroom for like a year and a half before he got his own place and we got married. So, like, they were really close with him. And when I told my parents, then when we went together to tell my parents that we were getting divorced, um, my mother looked me dead in the face and asked me, "Are you cheating on him?"
Yikes.
Yeah, because I was actually prepared. I was already in the preoperative process to have gastric bypass surgery. And so I'd lost like 40 pounds on my own leading up, and people just thought, "Oh, maybe she's feeling herself." I mean, they didn't know, and I can't fault them, but like I couldn't tell. Like, Blair, I wanted to go, "He's gay. I'm so angry." And he
Oh,
lied.
so when you
And
told your parents you're getting divorced, it wasn't that you weren't sharing the reason.
it was like over a
That's so
year.
hard.
Yeah, it was really hard because there were so many people. And then when it finally, maybe like a year or so later, it finally came out and he started being comfortable with coming out and stuff. The sheer number of people that when I would tell them or when they would learn that would just go, "Oh my gosh, that must have been so hard for him." I was just like, "Yeah, darn."
Yeah,
Like,
and maybe
and
me.
me too.
Hi.
Yeah, but which now it's funny. I mean, I can talk about this now. I can almost always talk about it without crying. Thanks for bringing out the tears in me.
Oh, you're
But
welcome.
you're welcome. But it, we are best friends again now. Me and him and my husband, Joseph, that I've been
Oh,
with for 8 years now, are like an absolute tripod of parenthood to our
I
16
love
year
it.
Old and our 20 year old. Like, we're just thick as thieves again. And it took a really long time to come back around to that place. But we're there. And so um I feel like sharing these stories gives people hope that, I mean, that's my entire life's purpose, is to be like, "Dude, I was here and now I'm here. My relationship was crap and now it's so much better." And you can absolutely go from cussing out an ex and never wanting to talk to them again to actually sitting at Thanksgiving and being there together in a
Yeah.
loving way for your child. I mean, that's just one of the many things I learned through this journey, was that it is possible. No matter how mad you are, you can actually take some ownership and get over yourself and do
Yeah.
it.
I mean, I guess there's like, first of all, thank you for sharing that and for being so vulnerable and like letting your feelings flow because, it's a grief, right? And, it's so many layers. Like, you've known him since you were a kid. He's the parent to your children,
Yeah.
the relationship with your parents. Like, And I think it's beautiful that you've found your way back into each other's lives in a new format, and there's no instruction manuals. Like, I
No
mean,
way.
I think it's a really beautiful journey, because like your kids are so lucky to have that. And
Yeah.
to show that love is kind of boundless and it does stretch and reform in different ways.
Hmm.
I want to go back to what you said about like your mom asking if you were having an affair. When your mom found out, or when your parents found out, what was that like? And did you get any apologies?
Um, yeah. I mean, I've totally reconciled with my family over so many things. I put them through absolute hell after all of that. Like my dream, like I got very deep in a bottle. It was really bad for my family. Um, I can't fault my parents for their level of understanding of the situation, but when they found out, then they really see this is where I failed and learned a number of times throughout my divorce and through navigating that super volatile relationship. Like, are we family? Aren't we family? How does
Yeah.
this all work? Um, like they really took my lead. So at first, it was like they were pissed, like especially my dad. Like he was very mad on my behalf, and I quelled that in them. I was like, no, 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 we're not gonna be angry, even though inside Blair, I was ablaze with anger.
Hmm.
But for my kids' sake, I was trying so hard not to show that publicly and try to include him in family functions still. Like for all the years right after that, like he still came to my family's Christmas. Like he has a pretty small family and I have a pretty
Hmm.
big family. And so like my family was his family. But
Hmm.
then it got to the point where when I started dating, things got harder because like he wanted me to be happy, but it was really hard for him to see me happy with someone else. Like I
Yeah.
want you to be happy, but not with anybody else. Like, and he very much admitted at one point, kind of during our reconciliation, that he really just wanted his cake and eat it too. He's like, I'm not gonna lie, I miss the family unit. I miss doing homework together with the kids and having
Mm.
dinners, but I also want to go be a gay guy. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, I'm really sorry for you, but I can't live like that.
Yeah.
But um but yeah, so it was good to reconcile that. It was good.
I'm Thank you. Thank you for showing up on this podcast and sharing that. I didn't know if we were what we were going to go deep on, and
I know, right?
I think, well, I know that you're not alone in this, and there's people listening to this that know someone going through something similar, or maybe they're going through something similar, and by you sharing, it's such a gift.
Yeah.
We
I feel
didn't get
like
to dive
it's
into all your health, and like I
I
love that we're both
know, yeah.
sober, and
Yeah.
I guess what we're gonna have to do is tell our listeners to just basically like dive into your world. All your links are in the show
That's
notes.
right. Go read the book if you want to know the whole story. The bottom line is that every person in Blair's universe that she has so beautifully created with this book, with this podcast, with this whole community is showing up for people in a way that is not shameful and smashing the stigmas of all the bullshit that we've been through, whether it's addiction or a health crisis or managing relationships or divorces or bankruptcy or whatever the shit is that we go through. It's my deep responsibility to stand up and say, me too, but it doesn't have to stay that way. Let us guide you. Let us guide each other.
Mhm.
That's what this human experience is about. Like, if we don't have that and we can't be vulnerable with each other and help each other, then what the hell are we here for?
Right. And you know what? I think that's so important because, we're not meant to go through it alone. Like we're meant to heal in
Mm-mm.
community. And it's not like we're not like Stepford Wives, or like we're not in Pleasantville or whatever, right? Like,
Right?
there is the duality of the good and the bad. And you don't necessarily need to be like Amy or me and like show up on a podcast and be like, hey, like
Yeah.
everyone died. My husband is
Yeah.
gay.
You're right.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
But
know,
your
uh,
neighbor, showing up at your church or at your neighborhood or at the
yeah.
park for another mom. Like,
But
that's just the
yeah, like
way we
exactly.
do it.
Yeah, it
Right.
doesn't have to be so public, but like we are not okay. And like you might have stories that, or things you've gone through that you've never really shared, and that's completely fine. But if you see someone going through something similar to what you went through, reach out to them, because these things are hard. Like navigating this shit is hard. Like there's
Yeah.
no like rule book. Like this is different. Like my husband is not gay. I'm Shane. I don't think you are. So I don't know, but like an example of like not knowing what to do is like people like when I got pregnant, I couldn't get pregnant. I didn't no one talks about how hard it is to get pregnant for some people. And then
Right.
no one talks about like how hard it is to stay pregnant. And so like fertility challenge wasn't on my mind. Miscarriage wasn't on my mind. And so when I got
Mhm.
pregnant and then miscarried, um, I didn't know how to do that and run a business. And I went to Google and I couldn't find anything. So I wrote an article with like my findings on
Oh,
like what I did. But like
yeah.
there really isn't a manual or you know,
Mm-mm.
maybe there's a LinkedIn article or something that someone wrote, like me. But by sharing these stories, we often can find the strength and the tools and the hope to apply them to our situations that we're trying to bounce forward from.
That's right. And I have found, at least the truth for me was when things got hard, because I was this strong person in my family and my community and my job and all these places, I felt so weak that what I did was retreat. And like you said, we're meant to heal in community, and I had zero community.
Yeah.
And it took an outsider reaching out to me, as I told in my story, that finally started that first step of 1,000 to recovery. So you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. We have to heal together. And I'm
Yeah.
so grateful that you have brought together this group of people now for the second time. And I can't imagine how many volumes going forward there will be, but it's meaningful. It's meaningful work.
Oh,
Thank you.
thanks, Amy. Oh,
Thanks.
just such a love bubble.
I
So
know.
yeah, so Amy's links are in the show notes. I feel like we're gonna have you back to talk about some other things. I mean, I just love chatting with you, whether it's
Same.
recorded or not. And um, you know, it's an honor to have you as part of our community. And I guess I need to come to Oklahoma because there's so many phenomenal people down there, and a
We're
lot of
pretty
you
rad.
and yeah. So you have something you're giving away. I know this isn't a marketing podcast, but because I love your humor and I think the gift is like quite fitting, it's what is it? Something about I'm just trying to find it. Oh, here it is. You're giving away a personal branding Canva template to help you get your own
Mm,
message out on social media using
yeah.
professional looking memes. So I think this is applicable to anyone who uses social media, not just people in business, because
Yeah.
like who doesn't love a meme? Who
Right.
doesn't love turning, you know, something a little serious and a little like blasé or a little, you know, boring or just anything into something funny, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
I love
So
it.
that's in the show notes. So get her
Perfect.
little meme template. I love it. I go through phases where I try and make memes and I have to like if I'm in like a funny phase, my sister and I will sit down and we'll bang out a bunch of memes. I
I
go through
love
phases,
it.
but you know, humor wins all. People want to be edutained, right? People like
That's
even in
right.
the darkness, like look at us, we're talking about such heavy stuff and we're able to crack some
100%.
jokes.
You have to.
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah, no, definitely. Okay, so as we wrap up, do you like if someone's listening to this and they're in a similar situation where they're learning their partner maybe into you know, the same gender or a different gender than, you know, who they currently are, and they haven't had that conversation yet, and they're wanting to have that conversation in the car when they're both facing forward driving home from their divorce trip,
Yeah. Yeah.
or anyone else who's, you know, thinking that their partner may be, you know, LGBTQ plus and haven't admitted it, and that their marriage or the relationship's going to have to shift. Like, what's your advice for someone who's wanting to have that conversation?
Yeah. I think that, my theme for the last couple of years, and this has not ever, it's not ever served me in a wrong way, is just to approach it with love and try really, really hard not to place a lot of blame. Find where your responsibility is and everything, and your responsibility to the person that you love because you did make that vow to love them.
Mm-hmm.
And ask questions in a loving and open way, and just give them the space to talk it out, and be open be open to the options. We even, my ex and I talked about staying together, having an open relationship, divorcing and getting a bigger house. I mean, we explored everything. And ultimately, I think we both knew that the answer was going to be complete divorce and separation. But just the fact that he knew that there was a trusted path forward, that I wasn't going to break his confidence, and that I did love him, even though I was very angry and it took me years to get over that. We were able to navigate it well just because I approached it with love.
So beautiful. Approach it with love. Approach
It's
it with
really
love.
hard when you want to choke them.
Yeah, and I think it's not about blame, right? Like
Right.
it's about having that conversation.
Mhm.
And I'm sure if you are in the situation and you want to chat with Amy, I'm sure she would
Absolutely.
provide
Yeah.
some
Check me on
insight.
my DMs. Check me on my DMs. Just it always, it always helps when you can approach it with love and truly put yourself in someone else's shoes. And when I really did that and thought, okay, I'm a 16-year-old boy in Oklahoma in 1996, like, really? Like, what are my options? Give me a
Right.
break, and that really it helped. It wasn't perfect, but love always wins.
Yeah, love, empathy, really. And that's for like any situation, approaching everything with love and understanding and empathy. It's definitely like changed the lens on how I look at situations and how I
Yeah.
respond when someone, triggers me. So I
Yeah.
think
Yeah,
that's beautiful
exactly.
advice. Well, thank you so much for joining us on Resilient AF.
It's my pleasure.
And thank you to everyone who tuned in for another episode. Thank you for spending some time with me and Amy. We really appreciate you. Life is full of ups and downs, left and rights, hard conversations in the car and
Yeah.
beyond. Just know that you're not alone and it's okay to not be okay. Let us be that lighthouse in the storm and remember. I'm tongue twisted. Remember, friends, you are resilient AF. That's a wrap for another episode of Resilient AF with Blair and Alana. And thank you for listening. Are you feeling inspired to bounce forward?
Let's connect at theglobalresilienceproject.com, where you can read many stories of resilience, buy our books, shop our clothing line, learn more about how to strengthen your resilience muscle, be empowered, and more.
Remember, friends, you are resilient AF.